Welcome to Tech Talk Taco Tuesday, episode number 212. This is Wednesday morning, the night after the show, and I have to apologize. Nah, I didn't do anything that bad, except I worked on my computer, I reset some programs, some settings got jacked up, and the show buffered like crazy, and I want to apologize to everybody who attempted to watch it live. And I'd like to apologize to my guest, Willie Musgrave of Motocross Action and ATK Motorcycles fame. Now he's starting a go-kart company. He's been doing go-karts for a while. He's got some big things coming. We talked about that, and unfortunately, that's when the computer started fritzing. I guess my computer doesn't like go-kart talk, but I'll have him back. I want to go riding with Willie. We talked a lot about racing, and you're going to hear this in a podcast audio-only format, so sorry about that. I'd like to thank all of my sponsors, Yamaha, Taco, Moto, Scott Sports, Climb, of course, Trail Tech, Fasst Company, Bulletproof Designs, Double Take Mirrors. You can support this show by clicking through our links in this holiday season when you're buying everything on Amazon. Of course, you can click through our link on Dirt Bike Test for Rocky Mountain ATV MC when you're buying stuff for your motorcycles. That helps us out a little bit. Maybe I can get somebody else in here to push buttons if they can stand me for more than, I don't know, a few shows. So with that, this will be the last time you can get the Tech Talk Taco Tuesday t-shirt. Once they're gone, and it's pretty much going to be gone in a couple days. Let's say we're clipping it on December 15th. No more availability. So find the links. They're on our social media platforms. We're not a t-shirt company, but we're working on it because we want to make the big bucks. And yeah, I'll start learning how to push buttons better, if you know what I mean. We're trying to figure out some bandwidths and some streaming things, all that kind of stuff, where all we really know is motorcycle and motorcycle-related products. This weekend, I'm doing a extreme enduro riding school out at the King of the Moto's Moto Madness event. You can sign up for that. The event is free. My school isn't, but it's inexpensive if you think about how much of a better rider you'll be when you get done. Check out jimmylewisoffroad.com. Of course, for that, always go to dirtbiketest.com when you have motorcycle product questions. Leave comments, ask questions. We'll get to them. Yeah, we even answer the ones in the chat sometimes. Actually, most of the time. And on a sad note, and a guy who was really influential to me, Rick Simon, did his last bomb run. He passed away last week, better known as Super Hunky, the original editor of Dirt Bike magazine, the guy who took Dirt Bike from this'll never work to one of the largest and most informative dirt bike magazines out there. Rick left us, and if you ever want to find out more and give his family a little bit of time to recover, but they have the book Monkey Butt. So if you are, and I've been a big fan of this, and Rick helped me out in my journalism career as well. It's got a lot of reading in there, and it has big type for all of us guys that remember Rick. So I'm sure he's ripping some Makos up in the skies right now. So anyhow, with that, here's the show in a podcast format. So here you go. So it wouldn't be Tech Talk Taco Tuesday without the amazing technical difficulties that we go through every time. And for that, this show would not be possible without our sponsors. Again, I'll tell you all the stuff you missed because I couldn't read lips. Show 212, brought to you by Yamaha, Taco, Moto. We would have done Roosterendo tonight, by the way, boys and girls, but nobody sent me any Roosterendos. Big announcements on that coming up. Scott Sports, I got the Pro Circuit goggles. Scott Sports Pro Circuit goggles, and I know my guest on tonight's show will be stoked on these. I think, at least the logo, I know this. And I'm going to see if we go here, and if the sound drops, we got a bigger problem. but I don't think it's going to drop right now. Now it looks like it's still working. Okay. Climb. Wearing a nice comfy Climb mid-layer. Technical riding gear. This is what keeps me comfortable when I ride and when I'm in the studio doing the show. Of course, DDC, Trail Tech, Fasst Company, Bulletproof Designs. We're going to have our Bulletproof Designs product of the week, and it's probably going to end up being tequila. I don't know why. And, of course, Double Take Mirrors, who I still owe them adventure riding video that just can't get produced because we can't get somebody to write a country song. So if you're in the business of writing country music or singing country music, I actually wrote the song. You got to make the music to match the song. You can help me out. So with that, I can't unmute someone else. Well, Willie, you're going to have to unmute yourself. There's probably a button you got to push, and then we can fix this. Sometimes there's like 3 little dots, and
you can see me okay.
I can see you okay. Yeah, the music's okay. It looks really good. And I was going to introduce you, but I had to push too many buttons and figure out how to do this. So, everybody, if you want a Taco Tuesday T-shirt, I'm going to put the link up in the chat right now. Tonight is going to be the last night you're going to be able to order these things because I'm going to go ahead and start process everything tomorrow. We're not a show; we're a T-shirt processing company, as you can tell. So I want to do it all in one day somehow or another. And let me go back to this screen here, and then I can go to this one there, and then I can bring Willie up on the screen. And I can even make Willie wear a Tech Talk Taco Tuesday T-shirt. Watch this. Let's see. Yeah. I don't know. The layers are wrong, but it's something like that. Anyways.
I can only imagine.
Yeah. Just leave me. So anyways, Willie Musgrave from Motocross Action test riding fame. You also were a big part of the ATK history and lineage for sure. And also, you were my nemesis at Carlsbad. We were both magazine kind of guys, and we used to battle on Saturdays at Carlsbad.
Yes, we did.
And those were some of my favorite times racing. And I always liked. I'll tell this story, and then we can kind of dive deep in it. I liked racing against you because you were a little bit older than me. You were always riding different bikes, and I could tell when Jody had given you a bike that you didn't like, because then I could beat you. or
well, you know how it is, though. I mean, it's we got to ride all the new bikes every year, and just they really are different. And some worked, like for me, some worked really good for me, and some just didn't work good for me. So it showed on the track, but we put the time in to do the articles and the testing, and the best way in what I've learned from Jody is to really see how a bike works is to go race it, because when you're out testing on a freshly groomed track, because you're doing the Yamaha test, it's smooth and you can go anywhere you want, and it's cool. But when you go out and race the bike, it's usually chopped up and bumpy, and you got guys on your butt, and you're trying to catch guys, and you got to go places where you not normally would like to go, and in a race you got to do that. So that's why we switched bikes a lot of the time in between motos. We go one moto a Honda, next moto a Suzuki. So a lot of times you do 4 motos a day, so you'd be on 4 different bikes, and that was a reason, just to try to get a real feel for the bike under those kind of conditions, if that makes sense. So I'll give you sort of insight to Jody's thinking.
Yeah, and I as much as I kind of I would always watch what he would do, and in the beginning, because back then the magazines were kind of like the Bibles, and even when I was young, that's what you thought was the that's where you got all your information from. And then when I actually started really getting involved I was doing testing for Dirt Bike Magazine, and then I actually did a little bit of stuff for Jody, and Jody wanted to hire me. He actually wanted me to work there, and I told him I could work maybe like 2 days a month. And that wasn't enough. And I sent him a letter that kind of said that to that effect. And he actually had it hanging on his in his office in the old office down on, God, was it Mission Boulevard down in San Fernando, San Fernando Valley. And but so it's funny because I could tell, like, when you guys were always trying different things, you're switching around pipes or messing around with suspension stuff, and it was when you had a bike that you liked, you would just, at Carlsbad, you would just ride just really solid, and you can't, there's kind of like a speed limit at Carlsbad. You can only go you can go so fast before you're just going to crash, because it was so hard pack and really slippery, and I just remember there was, I was pretty good at, like, kind of going just about as I don't want to say as fast as you could, because it was definitely faster, but I used to ride a KX500 quite a bit there, and then I'd also bring test bikes out, but like my favorite bike there was the KX500. It just, for me, worked really well. Yeah.
Well, for a guy like me, I moved from Washington State in I think 1982. I moved down here from Washington State. So back then, the Saddleback Blue Groove, Carlsbad Blue Groove, and I'm used to. Back then, Washougal actually had a lot of dirt on it, and the SIR local tracks there. And I'd come down here and have to ride on that stuff. I sucked. I mean, I could barely get around the track. It took me a few years, but after I got used to it, acclimated to it, or whatever, I enjoyed that. I enjoyed Carlsbad. Saddleback, I only got about 8 or 9 months before it closed down. But Saddleback was, I think, later on in the 80s or the early 90s or whatever, before, I can't remember what year it closed down. But by the end there, I was actually going pretty good and had some pretty good races with some really fast guys, and actually enjoyed going down and spending a Saturday there. So, but in the beginning, it was death defying. It's like I sucked so bad. And even even after all the years I put in, I was okay, but compared to some of the, Ricky Johnson and Lachine and those guys down there, they would go fast down there. Incredible.
Yeah, I think a lot of it was because they practiced on those hard pack, tracks like that. I mean, there wasn't such a thing back then. There really wasn't. I mean, when we were racing, they were kind of like Glen Helen was open on Thursdays, and there's a few tracks that you could actually practice at that were prepped, but like the guys that grew up, and like I grew up just riding these baked hard pack tracks around Southern California, so. Carlsbad, and I just remember Frank used to think I was an idiot because I'd show up and I'd be one of the guys that go out in the very first practice, and you know what that was like. It was like soup and slop, and I was an off-road rider. I wanted to go do ISD and all this other stuff, and he's like, "What are you doing?" And I just go, "Where else can I ride in mud in California?" And he's like,
"That is true. That is, but it is a different kind of mud. People got to understand, it's like clay,
slime,
so it's on hard pack." So it is slippery, and then your bike weighs about 40 pounds heavy, but then you wait about 2 hours and you just knock the fenders and the stuff just falls right off. But
we would just put Pam underneath the underneath the fenders and stuff. The same thing. I'd ride my practice, first practice, and then whatever other one, and then usually by the time the first moto came, KX500, just rev it a couple times, and all the mud would just fall off the parking lot. It'd be all,
vibrate off.
Yeah,
vibrate off.
Be all good, but good times for sure. And it should it shouldn't have surprised me, because I mean, back then was that during ATK, or was that shortly after ATK?
I raced ATK. No, I raced ATK. So I do remember doing I think a couple Commotion by the Oceans, local racing on ATKs.
Right.
I just can't remember what year Carlsbad closed. So if somebody had that would give me a better in my mind of when stuff sort of switched up for me. But I think I had quite a few years actually on ATK there. So I might have been all the way to the end when I left ATK in 1993. So I had from 87 to 93, I think I was on ATK. So I probably raced a lot of ATKs there. Plus, I did all the motocross action testing during that time span too. So I was in a unique position where Jody Weissel was really good friends with Horst Leitner, and Jody helped Horst, promote the ATK after Can-Am went out of business. So, Horst, I was signed by Horst. Actually, I'll tell you that story. So I think it was Pete McLean goes, Musgrave, you got to ride one of these ATKs. And we went out to some hill track in Temecula. Can't remember where, I think now it's all houses. But I showed up there on my Honda, I think I had at that time, Honda 250. And I took a few laps on his bike and I just went, holy macro. And it was like, whoop-de-doo track, small accelerating bumps into big bumps.
Was that a two-stroke or a four-stroke one?
Two-stroke.
Two-stroke.
First
Okay.
ATK first one I ever rode was an ATK 406, and I went out there and I just go, man, that is I want to ride these things at the Outdoor Nationals. So I got enough, whatever up to go drive down to Laguna Beach in the little shop that Horst had down there on the Laguna Canyon Highway, and walked into his office and sat down with him. And he knew me from racing at Paris and Carlsbad probably. And yes. I said, hey, I want to race your bikes at all the AMA Outdoor Nationals. And we worked out an agreement. And basically, that was my first factory ride, was with ATK. He paid me a salary. I got bikes and stuff. He brought me in to help do a lot of the development work. And from that, it sort of changed my direction in life, I should say, because I learned a lot from Horst. He was a entrepreneur, inventor, creator, and I could see him put this stuff into marketplace. And maybe the timing was pretty good for both of us to meet at that time, because I feel I helped tremendously in the ATK development. Was that the reason you moved down to Southern California, or you were not at all? No, down here already. Yeah, I'll tell you that story. So I thought I was going to be a football player. So I was through high school and all that stuff. I was pretty good. I think I weighed about 175, 185 pounds. I actually got to where I was really fast sprinting and stuff. I played middle linebacker on defensive team captain, returned all the punts and kickoffs, and I would rotate out as a fullback. And we made it to the Washington State Championship. I want to say 1981 or something like that. And we're a school outside of Seattle, about an hour. We have to drive down to Seattle, and we play on AstroTurf for the first time. This is 1981 for me. And I probably the first set rotation was of us being on defense. I'm in the middle as a middle linebacker position. The other team was just huge. And when the center and the guard and the tackle went down in their, 3-point stance, I could barely see over him. I could barely see the quarterback standing up back there. I look over, I think I played left side, middle linebacker. I look over at the right side, and I'm like, what are we going to do? We pretty much got our asses kicked. And at that point in time, I realized I'm probably going to be a little bit too small and not going to make it as a football player. So my dad asked me, what would you like to do? And I go, I like to work on motorcycles. So he got me hooked up with Lake Washington Botech for a year, and then Motorcycle Mechanic Institute in Phoenix for a year. And interesting. I think probably, yeah. So that's how I ended up in California. I worked for Mission Viejo, Honda, Kawasaki, BMW. Went through all the Honda Pro schools. Kawasaki had schools at that time. Went through as many as they had, and BMW actually had a couple seminars that I went to. So I could say I was Honda certified. And, Motorcycle Mechanic Institute. So I had a mechanical background. So when I took the job riding for Horst, they didn't really know me like that, but my mechanical background was definitely used throughout the rest of my life from 1987 on, with all the testing and stuff I did for companies. So I got to say I was, I got married young, got a job working at Mission Viejo, Honda, BMW, Kawasaki. So I think I was a commission mechanic for 5 years. And that's how I made a living, race. I think I was junior back then, novice class or whatever. Yeah. Raced out at OCR when Mickey Diamond and stuff was out there. I think I turned intermediate at that time by 1983. So I, funded everything myself, was married, didn't have kids till 1987. My wife helped me out a lot during that time. But just, basically a struggling privateer that got really hooked in to motocross and just wanted to be whatever I could be in motocross, and spent a lot of time waking up at 3 in the morning or 4 in the morning and driving from Mission Viejo all the way out to, think of Villa Verde was one of the tracks out in the hills out there, and I'd be there, and when the sun came up, I'd start doing motos and ride for a couple hours and load everything back up, and then drive back to work, back to work by 10 or 11 o'clock, and then work till 6 or 7 o'clock at night. So that sort of was my beginning lifestyle in motocross. People, I tell the story to people now, and they just go, "Man, you're insane." And I just go, "No, that's just, I wanted it." You
had a passion.
Had a passion, put in the time, and then had Suzuki support rides through Suzuki Country out in Norco. They helped me out a lot. They helped me go race the Rodale Supercross Series, I think in 1987. They got me a bike and stuff.
I think that's the one. That's the one that Jimmy Hawley won, right?
No, I beat him. That was in '88. I just about won that. My bike actually started to seize with a couple laps to go, and Bo Hogenberg caught me and barely won. I led it for the whole thing. I had it in the bag, and I had to baby the bike. And when I got back to the United States, the ring was completely seized up, and I don't know how I'd even finished, but some good times back then.
So the Saddleback closed in 1984, according to one of our viewers, Raymond, and
94,
84 Saddleback.
Oh, Saddleback, yes.
Saddleback, 84.
Carlsbad, yeah.
And Carlsbad, 2003 is what we have, according to Ashley.
Okay, so
I
didn't think it went that long.
I remember it went way longer than it should have, but it was okay. I don't know when it actually because they kind of stopped racing when I remember when Frank moved REM out to Glen Helen. That was still before, because he just what was the name of the crazy guy that ran Carlsbad?
Gus.
He was always barefoot. He was always walking around barefoot, and when we'd be out there.
I know you're talking about, and it's the name's on the tip of my tongue.
Yeah,
so
we're
getting old, so we'll remember that at midnight tonight.
We'd be out there testing with Honda or a tire company or something like that, and they'd spill Pentax down because he'd come over and just yell at us for doing something wrong.
So go on. So you just said that. So you go out there and test bikes out there at Carlsbad.
Yeah.
All right. So we would go out and test the bikes there, and then we'd have to do our photos for the bikes. And whether you're doing photos or having a guy ride for photos, but trying to get a picture at Carlsbad, like railing a berm or doing something like that, was the most difficult thing for me as a guy that was also testing, but also doing the pictures, riding for them and getting the pictures taken of me. Very difficult to get a cool shot, railing some bird with dirt roosting in the back, because there's no dirt.
It was like riding on cement. Yeah. I actually one of the most famous photos I had shot there was it was a BMW GS, and it was before I had anything to do with rally or something like that. But we had it out there. We were doing the drag strip testing, so getting all the numbers on the drag strip on the bike. And there was a photographer out there with us, and it was mostly because we were doing some other super high performance street bike. But then the photographer's there, and I went over and I was just goofing around this BMW, and those terraces up where people would park up kind of on the hill. I started jumping up those, and I got kind of a bit of air on a BMW GS. And I was just wearing street clothes. I mean, I think I had a riding jacket on, but it's probably just my Levi's and tennis shoes or something. And I just did this photo, and our art director saw it, and they're like, "Oh my God, look at this!" And they're gonna put it in the magazine. And she actually got to the point where she actually selected it and pulled it out and everything.
Yeah.
Then my boss came in, the editor, and he came in and goes, "What the hell?" He's like, "What are you doing?" Because tennis shoes, you could totally see tennis shoes. So this is before Photoshop or anything. They actually drew boots, and they drew stuff on my pants to make it look like I was wearing gear, so they could run this photo. It was like, well, I can. They thought it was like Evel Knievel shit or something. It's like, I could just go put gear on and we go back out and do it. We go find someplace better. I'll jump it higher. I don't know. What do you want? This is my job. Right?
It must have been a good photo. That's all I can say.
They
worked hard.
They just hadn't seen anything else like that, and it was like, okay, let's run this. But Carlsbad. Those were good times.
Good. Yeah.
So I like ATKs too, Willie. I'm gonna hold up a picture here. I don't know. You're gonna get to see it on the little screen, or if you have the big screen up and running, check that out. That's kind of like ATK glory days there.
That is, I can't. It's blurry on my screen here. But who's riding that?
That's me.
Oh, okay. No, that's badass.
That's let's see here. There we go. I'll put it up on a bigger one for everybody to see.
And we can say they couldn't do Photoshop back then, so that is really Jimmy riding back then. So that's good.
I was probably about 160 pounds wet, on that, and that's a 60. That was a 604, correct?
Yep, 60. You got it. Yep.
Yeah, 604. So
yeah,
my interesting, and that was that also had the countershaft disc, I think. On that one, or
I can go back
because I don't see a rear disc brake rotor on it at the time.
Nope, we had. I'll go into some little. Let's talk about ATK for a minute, if you guys want to listen. Let
me just. So here's how I met Horst. Is I was testing for Dirt Bike Magazine, and he showed up at LA County with this crazy thing that he wanted to put on the swing arm, and so it was called the Chain Torque Eliminator, and it basically ran the chain into a parallelogram and all these things. And I remember we were there doing like a 250 comparison or something, LA County Raceway, which gets a little bit choppy, but not too bad. But it always got those kickers on the lip of the jump.
Yes.
Yep. And so Horst came out there and put it on there, and a couple of the other guys rode it, and they just like, this is so stupid. This is dumb. This is stupid. And like this, I went and rode it, and I'm like, hey, I can hold the gas on over these kickers. And when I go around the turn, like I said, I was a lighter rider, so it really made a big difference to me. And I was telling Horst this because he didn't really tell us what it did, or at least he didn't tell me. He might have told the editor or something like that. And which was, I don't know, Tim Tolson, Joe Kosh, who I don't remember who it was at the time.
Yeah.
And so Horst's like, hey, what do you think? And I told him all these things. And it's funny because you could tell that he goes, okay, this kid can feel stuff, and he understood. So after that, I always had a really good relationship with him. Even when he had some cockamamie idea or something like that. Or I'd run into him out at he'd come out with the wrecking crew. He was one of those guys, and he'd always ask me because I'd be riding something weird. And he's like, it's like the point where it's almost like, what's wrong with you? Because there's Hondas and Yamahas and Suzukis, and you're on a KTM, and because he had had some development with these guys. But that was my meeting Horst story. Was he had this crazy thing, and I actually didn't just go, oh, it's just weird. I said, I want to try it, and it worked.
I come, again, meeting him and being as close as I worked with him for so many years, the engineering, whatever he taught me, because I wasn't an engineer, I never went to school for engineering, but the stuff that he taught me and how to, look at things, I sort of, became a self-taught engineer in being able to, manufacture and do a lot of different products. When I went in there and sat down with Horst, to get to ask to, if I could ride for him, he goes, he talks in very, like a word and then doesn't put a bunch of words in, then goes to the next word. So, it was like, Musgrave, I like you ride good. You hit you do the jump and land like within an inch of the same spot every time. And everyone else is short or too far. Yes, I want you to ride for, ATK back in the day. But, I never spent a lot of time on ATK. So I remember I get my first bikes and, I'm going out and practicing, doing what I do. And, I think I broke a chassis within like 2 weeks, like right above where the shock was at on the left side. And I'm like, that ain't good. And then the countershaft disc brake, I had issues with it in the beginning.
Are you a brake dragger?
Not anymore. that bike taught you not to drag the brake.
Yeah.
But I got to tell you, over the next couple years, C&J down in Fallbrook built all our chassis.
Yep.
And they're famous for flat track chassis and stuff like that. So I remember spending about 6 months of my life, working with Jeff down there and Chris, who was the welder, and from, gusseting to heat treating, different heat, taking a chassis and annealing it, heat treating it over a course of, a year, let's say. I basically got a chassis where it would last me easily over a year. And for the normal guy, it would probably last them, a couple of years if they kept the bike that long. So that improvement, then the brake, issues that we had over the years, that took a few years, but Mike Doherty was hired by ATK also as an engineer. And he came in and, he was a real engineer. And I also learned a ton from him on, how to make molds and, brake rotor material, brake pad material. So he really took the countershaft brake system, and at least on our factory bikes, and I think we offered it as an accessory. If you bought that kit, we literally didn't have any rear brake problems. I think Doherty was ahead of his time. We had basically ceramic pistons in the caliper. We had a thicker rotor that was machined out so it cooled itself. A brake pad material that really that came off of like a dump truck, humongous dump truck. I remember getting the brake pads in, we cut them up, and that's what our factory race bikes would get. Just so the chassis, the brake system, the snorkel system in the beginning. It's a cool idea.
Right.
The air filter was mounted up.
Yeah. Yep. So
on the two strokes.
Yeah. It was so who else? Who's riding those also? Zitterkoff?
Well, so over the next few years, I should say that Horse was teamed up with Ken Wilkes there for a few years, and the relationship did what it did, and usually most business relationships, and I have my current business stuff that I've just gone through. Horse sort of went through the same thing, but Ken Wilkes, had the money and could do stuff. So over the next few years, from Greg Zitterkoff, Ty Davis, Eric Kehoe, all rode our motorcycles and won us. At that point in time, the four-stroke world championship was really a four-stroke world championship, where there were one-off bikes being raced there from Honda. I think with Mike Young showed up one year with Crippa and raced that.
That went way back. I mean, they had those bikes that RJ would ride, and RJ even rode a Yamaha one, the ProTech one, and so pretty cool. I mean,
so it had So it had a different meaning back then than that sort of fizzled out because everything became four strokes. But back then it was, to win that race was pretty huge, and to get riders like I just mentioned to show up and ride our bikes, it was cool. A lot of those guys I brought on and worked with them, to ride our bikes. It was I can remember the first times going out with Ty or Kehoe or even Zitterkoff, them, me sitting back and then watching them have to get used to the bike.
It wasn't probably the weirdest bike I ever rode was BMW made a 450. And
I rode that too.
Okay,
that was
so that motor spun backwards. The counter shaft was on the swing arm pivot, and the clutch was on the crankshaft. And I was actually racing for BMW in the rallies when that bike kind of went through the idea farm. It's like, hey, we're going to build dirt bikes. And I know the engineer that pretty much was responsible for all the designs on that. And he was very much like Horst and just like, hey, I think outside the box and just kind of change everything around. And man, that bike did some stuff really good, but it did some stuff really different. So it just go ahead.
Yeah, I forgot one rider that we had there, Brian Manley. So Brian Manley was also very fast at that time. And I remember, we had, our suspension issues. We were using white power suspension back in the day before it is what it is now.
Yep.
He brought out Paul Feed. And I remember we spent a couple days out there and we got Brian comfortable on the bike and he hauled the mail. I mean, all of them did. We all,
Ty won the Chilean 250 Supercross championship on an ATK.
He did.
He
beat Kelly Andrus down there.
Yeah, I was down there. I was racing a 125. I was the 125 champion that year on a KTM.
You are the man. So I went down there also. Roland, I can't remember his last name. Rolando
Gutierrez.
Yeah, he brought us down there.
Right.
Yes, he brought us down there. So I went after Ty Davis did, and I remember pulling the whole shot in the first moto. I'm doing the first turn. I'm getting ready to turn the first turn. I got, just clobbered. I don't know if it was on purpose or whatever, but taken out of the race and pretty much the weekend there, right in the
because
the start of the
Rolando
first
wanted
motor.
to be the ATK importer, right?
He did.
Yeah.
Yeah, with good, nice guy. I still actually talk to him every now and then. And
Yeah.
he took me from Chile into Argentina. So I got to see the countries down there.
When you
it's pretty fun.
raced the race, was it in the bicycle velodrome? Was it?
I did that in Austria.
Okay. Oh, because
I went and raced that
hard cross.
hard cross in Austria. Mike Beyer used to.
Right.
I think he went there and was the man there. I went. Horst Leitner's brother. I'm sorry, I forget his name. Awesome guy. He brought me and Harry over there. Harry Leitner, Horst's son, and we got to race I think it was in Austria, and I think I broke 7 wheels in before the racing even got started. And they go, Musgrave, we have no more wheels. Just go slower. Don't jump. So I had it was what it was. I think we're on Kajivas, and we had the wrong tires, and yeah, it was a good experience. So I went there. I went to Austria, Germany, Italy, Yugoslavia, Russia. So it was a very good trip for me to do stuff.
All the garden spots.
Yes.
Yeah, that was. I got to do some of those doing the things. Hey, here's the goggles. I don't know if you can see these. These are Scott's Pro Circuit limited edition goggles with the Pro Circuit logo on the strap. So if you're looking for some of these, go to Scott Sports, because you were always a Pro Circuit guy.
I was. I just talked to Mitch yesterday.
Yeah.
I do go-kart stuff now, and he is helping us do all our pipes. I bring in Yamaha engines, and we mount them on a chassis that we build in Riverside, California. And we had some issues a few months ago, and I'm a little bit behind right now on pipe development. So he's helping me try to get this stuff done as fast as we can. But I've known Mitch since the mid 80s or something, and Bones will tell you the story. I was a local guy, and I think I walked into their shop in Anaheim, and I got along with the guys, and I that's when Jimmy was there, and
Mike Hooker,
Jim Perry, and Mike Hooker was there, and did a lot of engine testing back then, and pipe testing, and suspension testing. I did suspension testing with Bones. I want to say into the mid 2000s. I was older, but we'd go out and, we wouldn't show up at Glen Helen until noon, until the track was already thrashed, and then we'd stay till the sun was down. So we were definitely not the new crop of motocross guys that would show up at the Glen Helen at 8 and, be home by noon.
Yeah, out of there.
The track got too rough. Yeah, we were the opposite of that. Then his brutal tracks that he would take us up to in Asperia. I don't know if you ever got to riding that stuff up there. Holy
the stuff in Honda Valley, right?
Oh my God. Yeah. Some whooped out and gnarly ass tracks that you could die on, but it was good suspension testing. So I know some guys, loved the stuff and some guys didn't. I had my part in that stuff. Like yourself, you probably got to ride a lot of factory bikes.
Yep.
Like works bikes. So
some
me too.
Some of the best and some of the worst bikes ever.
Yes, I've gotten to rid price like the Carmichael's, McGrath's, a huge list of bikes.
So what was
I don't know if you know
what was your favorite? Okay, I want to roll back to Bones in a minute too. But so let's roll back to Bones and we'll start talking about factory bikes. That's a really good road to go down.
Yeah.
So Bones is one of the few suspension tuners that I can just his base settings are kind of right along the lines of where I would like my bike to be. Like, he knew he'd seen me ride, he knew where I was at and stuff. He kind of knew I was an off-road guy, which I think kind of fit into it because
he was off-road. He was off-road, if you know him.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
And so he did a lot of stuff, but I would always have him do motocross stuff because it's just a Pro Circuit name was a lot more synonymous with motocross. But he could just because he doesn't go crazy with anything. He just kind of fixes the stock stuff where maybe a lot of people would think it was lacking, and wasn't trying to redefine the bike. But the one time I said, "Hey Bones, I want to do an RMX 250," and that was the Suzuki off-road bike, and I'm going to go do the National Hare and Hounds on it. And he was like, "Oh yeah," and like it went from just do the suspension to like, bring the cylinder down, we're going to get you a pipe. And this thing that bike was such a bitchin' bike for everybody who thought they were turds. And there was
Yes.
a whole bunch of guys riding Suzukis, and they were all over the place doing all these guys doing their suspension and stuff. And like literally by the end of the year, everybody was on these bikes that were copies of mine. You know, just they had bones to the suspension.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's good.
Well, my bike was just pull. You know, as I was always the first 250 of the bomb, and it was But yeah, that was my. I've always always got along with him really well.
Yeah. So like we can talk. You've got probably about as long as a career tested motorcycles as I do. So, now that it's 2023, just about 2024. I mean, you got to understand like the suspension, design engineering of what we had to ride in the 80s and the 90s. I mean, it was terrible. I mean, so to try to make that stuff good is hard. Compared to the stuff that's being produced now.
That ATK didn't even have PDS. It was before they even knew what to call it.
They didn't have any of that stuff. But it's just, so you hear some guys, bitch or whatever, but it's like, the stock stuff that, you're sending your suspension in to get fixed at whatever suspension company, it's, there ain't a lot we can do with it because of the design. Lets you step up and you get the real stuff. So during that timeline, I got to ride, with A kits and stuff like that. Then I got to ride the factory bikes. And a lot of times when I got on the factory bikes, I mean, in an hour of riding this thing, I'm like, if I had this thing, for a month or 2 months or a year, the level of my riding would just skyrocket because the confidence and stuff of, the quality, I'll say, of that suspension components compared to what the normal guy had to ride with was such a drastic difference.
Yeah. Okay. So back.
You follow what I'm saying?
Back in the day. I'll give this to you. I mean, when we started getting like into the 2000s.
Yes. You could take stock stuff.
Yeah. Stock stuff. You could get it really, really close. But in the old days, like it was night and day for sure. And that's all the stuff. And that's the cool thing about our sport, the motocross side of things, is that stuff evolved into production pretty quick. When they found something that worked,
they put it in there.
You hear Bones tell his story about, working on Ricky Johnson's stuff. He had that setting that he kind of got from Ross. Like Ross literally gave him this setting, and you learn about all the kind of the suspension guys and how they kind of, talk to each other and trying to figure stuff out.
Yes.
Because these days I hear guys complain about their suspension. And like, first of all, I go, you have no idea how good what you're riding is. I mean, even on some of the bikes that are considered bad, I'm like, you have no idea how good that is, number one. And number
you're
two.
Correct.
And I always say, I'm like, because they're just going to send it off and the suspension tuners will hate me for this. It's like, if you don't know exactly what you want done to it, I don't think they're going to make it that much better. Being involved on the production side of suspension testing and realizing it's like they really do try to kind of shoot for the middle of the road, and more than likely you're closer to the middle of the road than you think you are. I mean, weight and extra weight and height or less weight and height
that can affect it.
Yeah. So, but that was super super good times.
So now, were you like when you got in doing your job and stuff? Were you a motocross guy or an off-road guy when you started doing your stuff?
I did motocross until, well, I know exactly when I did motocross till Jeremy McGrath and Mike Chamberlain jumped over my head at Carlsbad when they cut that ditch and they made it into something that you could sort of double that was really far. I mean, it was nothing 5 years later or whatever, but like in the 125 novice class or intermediate class, it was intermediate class. Like they jumped over my head, and I was sick of 4-lap motos at a CMC Golden State. And so
you're at a CMC race, Golden State.
Yeah. So I switched over to off road, and that was in good grief, what year was that? So that would have been 86, I want to say, somewhere around 86, and. Because I remember I was just doing all the series for the Bucks. I was doing all the SMX races and just chasing the intermediate. I was a pro intermediate, and I slowly went from getting like seconds and thirds to Mike Kidrowski and Lowell Thompson and then I went through guys like Jeff Emig and Denny Stephenson and Willie Surratt and Ty Davis, and the list goes on. And I just finally said, and I worked my way from third back to about seventh. Every race, I'm like, over the course of 2 years, and I'm like, I don't think I'm going pro. I think I'm going backwards. I like.
Well, at that era, at that time, that we had the racing locally was unbelievable here in Southern California. We had I don't think we'll ever see that again. Like that local racing, you'd show up at wherever, and that talent would be there. And it lasted for quite a few years, and probably till whatever the mid '90s, and then it faded away. But I started off as moto, and then when ATK I became an off-road racer. I remember they go, Musgrave, you got to do the Barsoda Vegas race, man. It is awesome. It's going to be so much fun. And I'm like, okay. I had no clue. And I remember pretty much, got smoked on the start. And I think I was in dust the entire race. I think I finished like 21st or 22nd or 23rd or something like that overall. And I came back and I just go, you got to be kidding me. That was fun.
Was this the last ever?
I think it was the last. Yeah, the last when it was rolling. It was the last year of that. And I think they tried to bring it back a couple years later. I didn't do that, but it was like the last year of the real
race.
Vegas.
They had like a tribute race that was still around Lucerne Valley and stuff. It wasn't
it wasn't
the point. Yeah. I may have beat you on a 125 that year.
I don't think you did. I looked the other day. I don't think so.
You don't think so? Yeah.
I'm going to look. I posted the results somewhere. But
because I think I'm trying to remember I got up into I wanted to beat Halgath really bad. And then so
hauled ass on a 125.
And so did Eddie Arnett.
My God.
Well, I raced with him all the time out there. And it was either
amazing.
He would either crash or he would do real well. And he ended up I've never won an overall of a district hare and hound on a 125, but the one time that I almost did, and which would have been, like I got second overall, I think. He beat me on a 125. I was so pissed.
Crazy. No, he was amazing. But riding desert, I mean, that is, to pick up I should say, if you're up in the top 10, to follow the course is very difficult because the trail's not formed yet. So like for me, I would get in the top 10 and I would, I'd miss the trail
turns. Yeah.
You got it. So it was difficult. So I went, I did all I think Casey Folks Best in the Desert stuff.
Desert races. Yep.
I did that. A few of the District 36 or whatever they had out here. Then ATK had me do a lot of the AMA hare scrambles. So I got to travel around.
You had Ron Naylor.
And John Martin, who was AMA hare scrambles champion. So,
well, because he was on Can-Am.
Well, when Can-Am went out of business, he's the one that approached Horse. He showed up at I think Horse's shop in Laguna and says, "Hey, Can-Am's out of business. Can you build us a motorcycle? I can get you the engines, or you can get the engines, and let's give the Can-Am dealers across the country another product to sell." So that's how ATK really got formed. And I want to say Don Lieb and Jack Roten went out and pre-sold a couple thousand ATK motorcycles, and that's what got the ball rolling for 1987 production. And then they had all these motorcycles sold. I think I just had made that agreement with Horse to do the nationals, and they couldn't build the motorcycles. I think it took them, a week or whatever to build a motorcycle. And I remember Horst or Penn asked me, "Hey, we need help. We need to build these motorcycles, and it's taking too long." So I remember going up to City of Commerce where ATK moved up to, and it was a big building. We, I think between all of us,
they started in Laguna Beach.
Yes. Yeah.
And then moved up to Commerce.
City of Commerce, and we were there till 93, and we had a nice assembly line, and everything was sort of rolling along. But the problem was, for ATK is the access to engines that we had were old engines from the 70s. So, as that era or that point in time, the technology on the two-stroke engine was just, every year was, from the 93 Honda Sierra 250. I mean, that thing was a rhyme. And just, we were competing against that on a, crummy clutch, old ignition, air cooled. and it's, we needed an engine. We had issues. So Ken Wilkes ended up selling the company to Frank White out of Utah.
Yep.
In '93.
Frank White, believe it or not, is actually in our chat right now.
Hey, hi Frank. No.
It's funny because we had a show not too long ago where we did the best of show, and we did the worst of, and I think I couldn't really pin it down, but I think I picked the ATK 700 two-stroke as my worst bike ever. And I had no. It somehow it got back to him, and he got back to me. He's like, he's such a good sport about it. He was just like, how come you beat up my bike? I gave you. I raced one of the single-sided 4-stroke frames in a National Hare and Hound and got top 10. I just showed up in Utah, and him and Don Greiwe, who got me my job at Cycle World.
Greiwe Road.
The Ogre,
good guy.
The Ogre says, Jimmy, come on up. We got a brand new. It was a prototype, with oil in the frame, single-sided swing arm, or single-sided, frame, and I rode that in a National Hare, and I think I got top 10 in that thing, and
that's awesome.
I didn't break it. Which is
no, that's good. But, I've been talking with Frank. We're doing some stuff with ATK, or sort of. You could see some stuff coming from us here in the future. So
cool.
He's a good guy.
The other bike may have been the Cannondale, which is something else he purchased.
He tried.
I was the only
That's
guy.
A tough one.
I was one of the only guys that could get those Cannondales to work really well. I played around with
How?
I remapped the ignitions and the fueling with the little palm. You plug the Palm Pilot into it, and then I know how to torque bolts, so I could get the chassis actually pretty decent. They made a lot.
I'm just gonna say, at the speed you went, that probably would work. At the speed we went, we had issues with the thing. Yeah. I don't think we finished a lap on every, and we had the Colt Cannondale crew out there with us
for racing.
It would. Oh my God! It would go pop, and we couldn't start it again.
Well, you needed the Jimmy Lewis map. It got really popular on the internets back then, which is a whole different thing.
But we couldn't slow ourselves down to that speed, Jimmy. Just kidding. I'm messing with you.
No, I know. Hey, well, Dirt Rider. I wasn't a Dirt Rider at the time. Don't blame me for this. They called it the bike of the year.
I know.
At Cycle World,
Ken Font.
I spent a lot of time getting it. We said, hey, this bike has some potential, and there's some forward thinking in this engine design. All this stuff. Look at the Yamaha. Look at the current Yamaha, and don't tell me that they never saw and never even thought about a Cannondale at all. I mean, they didn't want to make a Cannondale. They said, some good ideas there. Maybe we can use some of this stuff.
Well,
same thing.
I can tell you about, like, the Cannondale. The problem there is, so you're doing a project like that. I'm just going to say the group of people that you pick to do a project like that are key. And the problem is Cannondale's already spent, I don't know, X amount of money on this project. So the bosses up above are pushing, hey, you guys got to finish this thing up, but your development's not done. So to me, they're probably 2 years too early on the release of that motorcycle. So you take something like Yamaha, they didn't just release that, the first YZ400. They spent, you can go talk to Dubach, spent years developing that thing.
I just had Mike Ulrich on, and that's how he got his job as a test rider, starting that.
And then there's a system. So you're looking at the Japanese who've been, really, dominating the sport until KTM, recently, but I can go into that whole story too. But the Japanese, they don't forget what they were doing in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s and the 90s. All that knowledge is used to help them develop a product. And that's why it's so good. And that's why a bike is $10,000 or $13,000, but it's what you're getting for that amount is
crazy.
Off the charts.
Yeah.
Crazy. But Cannondale, go back to that point in time, they don't have that experience. They don't have 30 years of developing motocross bikes to know how to make a swing arm not break, or, the steering head angles and all that stuff to work. And so bold move, but probably got forced into releasing it 2 years too early.
Yeah.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then the group of guys that are testing it, you, as well as I do, you can go down a wrong path and you don't know
Rabbit
it
hole,
if you're the wrong group. So like, I just remember Horse, when I was, working for Motocross Action, and even Ken Wilkes, go ride all that stuff. So when you come back and ride our stuff, you have an idea of what everybody else is doing. So like that Cannondale group, should have had every other bike or a couple people that had the jobs that I did riding all this other stuff, come back and be a test rider, go, you guys you're off. You're going down a path that this thing ain't going to work.
And having it, like say, having that experience, that range, and all the different bikes, and like whether it's the history you have is in whether this is going to be difficult to manufacture, this is going to be really rough to work on if you ever had to work on it. There's so many things, and you can have a revolutionary idea that may be so much better on one front, but on the other front it's a different thing. And speaking,
go ahead.
Yeah, speaking of that rabbit hole, like that's one of the times I do a lot of product testing off the side from not editorial, and I get called in when the company is just kind of like they're really not sure, and they just say, "Hey, you want to come and ride this and just tell us what you think?" Yes. I have no problem doing that. I don't have any attachment to this thing. It's just another motorcycle, and I can kind of pick it apart really quickly. And I'm like, yeah, this is doing this. Do you want it to do this? And usually they look at me and they're like, you noticed? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, yeah, that's kind of what we thought. And then it's like, okay, can we get rid of it? And the funny thing is if a lot of times when I get called in to do that, I say, well, what if we do this? Because you've done this, you try these different things before. What if you do this? What if you do that? And these guys are smart these days. It's like, well, that does this. Yeah, okay, that's usually what it does. Okay, and none of them are good. And they're like, and this is usually pretty late in the process where it's like, yeah, we can't change the frame, and the suspension spec is kind of getting finalized tomorrow.
You're forced to release that product again, and before it's time. Just like what you've done, same thing. So, for the 25 years I tested for Motocross Action, I also, tested for, Honda, Suzuki, other companies, R&D, with Dean, testing products, the same thing, just because my ass was on the seat of so many different products that I could fairly quickly get on a bike and just, you're off compared to this, which is very successful. So, and I don't think there's too many people, Dubach's probably one of them that has that kind of seat time and riding stuff. Motocross Action tester, or dirt rider tester, or dirt bike tester, if their mindset is right and have a mechanical background, could be that. I don't know what it is today, like who those people would be.
I mean, I used to test my test riders. We'd be doing, and even when you're out, with the manufacturer when they're introducing the bike, they used to do those intros and stuff. And Willie, right now, I should bring, Jody probably get mad, but I should bring you out with when we go one of the ones with just dirt bike tests, just to see some of the goofballs that show up to these things, because they're like influencers and they have a lot of followers, and some of them can ride and some of them can't ride. And the ones that can't ride are really scary because they just don't have that experience, but they want to be part of that thing. So I've never seen guys like walk around at the intro and like start really trying to listen to what you're saying, what I'm saying, what someone else that they know who the people that know are, or they're asking questions that are like, it's like, that's for you to find out. You don't ask me what I think about this, because
that's your job.
and I think the skill of a really good test rider is to be able to like identify the things and then to describe the product, as opposed to say whether it's good or bad. And when we roll back into what Jody was really good at, is Jody was really good at making an entertainment medium out of something that was, if he knew we were all going to trip over our dicks on bike A, he's going to pick bike B as the best and tell you why bike A isn't, knowing that he's the only one that, quote, tells it like it really is. And then Then he's going to run it down to Pro Circuit, and they're going to fix it. And the next month, you're going to see how to fix the damn thing.
Well, I mean, I could come back and say, though, we never would pick best bike or, evaluate a bike on like a lot of people don't know, but like whatever we're testing, let's say it's Yamaha, Suzuki, Kawasaki, KTM, whatever. Yeah. They go out and they rent us a track, they groom it, water it. It's beautiful. You go out there and you ride the bike, and
this is this is at the intro.
Yeah, this is at the intro. So you're riding the brand new bikes for that year, and most people don't understand this. So you go out and ride on this track. A Hidaka would feel great on this track because there's no bumps, there's no nothing. All you other magazine guys that go, oh, that is the greatest bike. Motocross action guys, I'm just telling you, back in when I was a part of it for 25 years, we never, ever evaluated on paper what that bike was until we took it back and were able to test ride it at our facilities, which would be, usually Carlsbad or Paris or Corona Raceway, Glen Helen, all those tracks that we were at for all those years, and put it under those conditions. So we would usually be a month or two after you guys pick, this is the greatest bike or whatever, but you guys were riding it on fluff, like smooth, beautiful berms.
Intro day was never. Intro day was just an intro day, and we always, I always would. And before the internet, the problem is now you have to have your video up 45 minutes. And, after the bike, the curtain comes off the bike, you have to have a riding video. And I mean, these guys now. I watched some of them the other at the Kawasaki 450 intro we just did. They were explaining how the bike worked before we were allowed to ride. They were saying what this bike doesn't, and evidently the bike had been out. I don't know if either of these clowns had ridden it, but it had out, and the people were talking about it. It'd been out for like 2 or 3 days because it hit dealerships and stuff. Like, but they're already doing their ride. They're doing to get it up quick. Like Don Maeda at Transworld, and now doing his Swap Moto thing was as the digital era went on, was a master of just being able to get that stuff out first. And I remember I jokingly told Terry Beal when he was doing Yamaha stuff, we were down. They flew us down to Costa Rica to do an intro on Yamaha WRs, and we're sitting there at the dinner where they're introducing the bike and everything like that. And I go, Terry, I want you to read my test and see if it's accurate. And he's like, what? And I go, well, there's a couple little blanks I have to put in, fill in the blank where I have to say the power was increased here or decreased there, like other things. But I can ride this thing for 10 minutes tomorrow, and I can come back and I can add a couple words and push send, and this thing will be on the internets. And he's like, how the hell can you do that? And I go, years of experience and whatever. And if I get it wrong, who's going to tell me?
I know that's. And so again, like, is it good to be first, or is it good to be a little bit later, but right? So like, understand, like, I've been a good friend of Jody's for decades now. So I mean, it didn't matter who he offended or whatever, but in his head, his philosophy was always to look out for the consumer. So whether it's a pair of boots, goggles, motocross bike, handlebars, grips, he would always, like, do it to the whatever nth degree to make sure that he was protecting the person that went out and paid the hard cash for whatever they're buying, like that list of stuff I just said from A to Z. And, from where we were sitting watching everybody else, a lot of times that wasn't the case. So he didn't care about how much they paid on advertising, which would piss off, Metzger and all the guys that were working at the advertising at High Torque. I remember us, getting banned by Suzuki and us going out and getting Suzukis and riding them, buy our own bike. And I remember one year Suzuki wouldn't help us, and it actually was Bike of the Year. So again, I from the outside's perception of motocross action, I know there's all the naysayers and haters and stuff, but if you really understood, for the decades that I was riding with him, what the group of guys that he had around him at that point in time as test riders, the information that we were trying to give him so he could write these articles, from his heart, that's why he wrote the way he wrote and put the stuff out the way that he put out. And I know it pissed off a lot of people, and I sort of believe in the philosophy that he told me, from really the first days of me riding for motocross action, starting back in 1987, stuck with me all the way to the end.
Yeah. I really felt more like he was, he understood the entertainment part of the medium.
Oh, yeah.
He realized that, and it's funny because I grew up as a kid reading Jody's box, and also, by the way, rest in peace, Rick Simon, super hunky.
Yes, yeah.
Passed away, and he was really influential for me. And
yes, same here.
Maybe I will talk a little bit more about my experiences with Rick maybe next week or something. But with like Jody. I read Jody's box, and and then I'd show up at like an SMX at Paris and stuff like that, and I'm like, oh my God, there's the motocross action guys, and you could tell because they had all the latest greatest bikes, but they weren't spring chickens by any means. I mean, they were like I joked when we talked the other day, I said Willie, you were old because you were racing vet when I couldn't race vets. That meant and now we look at us, we're still racing in our 40s and our 50s and 60s. And those guys, they were in their 50s and their 60s when we were vets. They were 20 plus years. And so as I was got to know him around all this stuff, I realized that he did take the testing serious and stuff like that, but I think he very much understood the entertainment factor, and then he did everything he could to make his brand stand out. And I said, I always had that kind of that feeling that there was maybe we would get caught up a little bit more in the fanfare of a bike, which everybody does. I mean, that's why you rush out and you put your money down, you want to do it. Yeah. But at the same time, those bikes, the new ones, the ones that kind of turned our heads, had some merits, but they always had some problems. And man, he would hone in those problems, crucify them. Literally crucify them. Take it
the stickers would fall off, and they'd get shot down.
Take it down and show you how to fix it, and whether and I was always sitting there. It's like, well, if I want to sit kind of on the back part of the seat and hammer the clutch, maybe I do need to put a bigger sprocket on it and stiffer fork springs. But that's a whole different story. It was kind of a.
But you got to understand. But you got to understand, like, he would not himself ride the bike and come up with what was said. So from me to Larry Brooks, I'm trying to think back in the day. I think me and Larry did a majority of the test riding for decades there.
Yep.
So he would listen to our input, and then every so often he'd have another guy come on, and that's how he usually gauged his articles on. So it wouldn't be you go to an REM race, not just him riding the bike and what he's feeling on it, because he knows he's at that age and doing what he's doing. But it was really the input and the trust of, the test riders that he had around him at that point in time. And he'd use, not that I was super fast.
You were fast. He'd use some of his guys, some of his vet guys, like Thornwaldson, and I'm trying to think of all the guys. Bob Rutten was always riding your bikes.
Yep.
You got
Alan Olson,
the Alamangas brothers. Do you
Alan Olson, Oh yeah. They were later, but like Alan, for back in the day, it was Alan Olson, Ray Pizarski,
Skinner,
me, George Kohler, Randy Skinner. Yep. So I mean, he had his little group of guys there. I was the young group, or the young guy in that group,
right?
And I learned so much from those guys. I can't explain. Just anybody that's planning on retiring at 62 and think they're going to just go play golf or something like that. All I can say from me hanging around old guys all the time, that's good for about a year, but you really need to find something and keep doing something to keep your brain active. Find something that you love doing.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, we're gonna go ahead and take a commercial break. Can you stand for a few more minutes? I want to find out the best and worst factory bikes. We'll come back with that.
You got it.
And then we got a couple quick questions to add. So we're gonna go ahead and take an ad break, and we'll be if I can find the button, we'll be right back.
The defending champion, the all-new Yamaha YZ450F.
What's up, Moto Buddies? Mike here from Taco Moto Co. What is the Taco Touch? It's the best service in the industry. Virtually 24/7 tech support via email or text, and it's like having a dirt bike doctor on call every day of the year, helping you fix your bike or recommend parts or setups for you. If you've ever received an order from us, you know that the Taco Touch extends to our fulfillment, and our orders come with the coolest stickers that you've ever had, buying parts from anybody before, and a handful of root beer barrel candies. All of our Taco Moto Co. branded components come with a no questions asked lifetime warranty, and we'll even extend out the warranty of other manufacturers, OEM, and aftermarket parts where we can, sometimes for life. We test and tune endlessly and exhaustively and obsessively. We're trying to destroy everything that we can before you get your hands on it, to look for weaknesses and to improve it, or to make recommendations to the manufacturer. And if it's something that doesn't meet grade, then we don't offer it on the store. Everything that we carry is something that we have personally used, tested, and ridden, and raced, and knows meets the high Taco Touch demanding standard. Go out and get some adventure.
And we are back. Tech Talk Taco Tuesday, episode number 211. Special guest, Willie Musgrave of Motocross Action and ATK, and now Factory Cart is what you're doing. So
Yes. You want to hear that story?
Go-karts. Well, I see, like I still remember. I don't know if we raced. Yeah, we raced a few times when REM moved to. When REM moved to Glen Helen, I didn't go as much. But you were there every weekend, right?
Every weekend.
Every weekend.
I lived at Glen Helen for years.
Yeah, and you were at that time. You were dragging around a lot of kids that were racing.
I had my kids, yes.
Yeah, were
Billy and Brittany?
They're both racing.
My daughter, Brittany, and my son, Billy, yeah, they race with me every weekend I'm still with my son, work with my son every day. My daughter, all the way up until a few years ago, got married. She moved to Texas. But yeah, we've got awesome memories, going and traveling around racing and, doing all that stuff. We had a blast.
So I remember if I beat you at Glen Helen, it was because you had screaming kids with like motorcycle problems, and Jody put you on a pile of shit, and then I could show up with whatever kind of weird thing I was riding at the time. Hopefully, it wasn't a Cannondale.
Well, he probably had me on one of those. Remember the Vor? I think it was called a Vor.
Oh yeah. Pete used to give me Vors all the time too. Yeah,
I'm a 5'9" guy. I'm a 5'9" guy, and I think that thing was built for like a 6 foot.
It was built
5 foot guy.
It was built for Gordon Ward. It tried to end Gordon Ward's career many times.
That thing. We have ridden some stuff. That is for sure.
Yeah, that was some cool stuff. Anyways, so we're gonna talk go-karts in a minute, but I want to talk about because we both had the opportunity. What is the best factory bike you ever rode?
I'm going to be really honest. I'll put in the best and funnest factory bike I ever got to ride is, I'm going to say, a Mitch Payton KX 250F, and I think I rode Tedesco's. So that's back in the early 2000s.
Wow.
One of the best, funnest, made you just feel like you were the greatest of all time, no matter what you hit. Unbelievable bike, just the handling, the power, spectacular. So that's one of my favorites. I remember riding a Bale's bike back in the late 90s, I think it was.
A 500 or 250?
250.
I rode his 500, and his 500 may be my favorite one.
There's, I think, a photo floating around out there. I think I'm a number 111. I think I sent that picture to you, but that thing was oh, like I say, I got to ride all the stock stuff, and then I ride the pro circuit modified suspension stuff, which was better than stock. But then when I got onto like a factory bike, I dreamed about someday becoming like that level of factory rider, because what they got to ride on, and I only got to ride on for a couple hours, if I was lucky. But if I could ride on that for a month or 2 months, the level that it would take you riding to would be what I see the Lawrence brothers doing.
Right.
I mean, just like
You
it
feel
could take
like
you
that,
to
right?
yes. I mean, you could hit anything, come a little short, over jump, the power. I mean, just the whole package was just unbelievable. And that's back, I think, in 1989 when I rode his bike. That I've ridden a bunch of McGrath's bikes, unbelievable.
Oh, really?
Carmine.
Okay. So we'll quickly go to. So I thought you were gonna. I saw a picture the other day that you posted. Actually, what kind of reminded me, I gotta talk to Willie. Was you put a picture on the KX125, and I kind of thought you were gonna go there because I didn't ride Ricky's actual bike. I rode one that Mitch built for us at the magazine. It was like how close can you get it to that? And it was pretty damn close. It was like he said, this is a 4-hour motor. This is a 4-hour motor, and the suspension was we ended up getting somebody had some A-kit suspension, and they Bones tuned it up and made it right for that bike, and it was a really fun bike. But Bale's bike could be the best one, but at that time,
I'm saying for that time,
and I rode his 500 GP bike, the one he won the Glen Helen 500 GP on. And did Cliff White tell you he would kill you if you crashed it?
No, he never said that to me, but I couldn't touch anything. Had to ride it exactly.
Right. That's the way
setup.
That's always the way I rode. When I rode a factory bike, I never changed click. I rode it the way they rode. I didn't really ride them for that long because you're trying to get the experience of that bike. But yeah, Cliff White pretty much told me, because I think somebody else from Dirt Bike Magazine, I did it for Dirt Bike Magazine, somebody else from Dirt Bike Magazine, I think it was Rich Jachinsky or one of the other test riders, had cartwheeled one of the factory bikes the last time they did it. And he basically just looked, and I'm just a kid, I'm like 20 something. He just looked and he says, if you crash this bike, if these grips that he cut in half and put different compounds in, he goes, if these grips touch the ground, he goes, I'm going to kill you. So I'm like, I got to go do a motocross action style berm shot on the side. I got the magazine's sitting right over here. Maybe I'll go grab it before the end of the show. Too. But I gotta go do that. I could easily lose traction and kind of end up on my head. But no, I came away unscathed. But the problem, I think the best bike I ever rode, believe it or not, was Tim Ferry's factory Kawasaki 450, and it's funny because it never really stood out as anything other than just it was like Tim set up a bike for me, and when I've heard other people describe it and talk to it, it didn't feel anything like the way they talked about it. Like it had one of the smoothest, longest pulling motors, and the Cowies always felt heavy to me. And this bike didn't. Yes. This bike felt like lighter than a Honda, like way lighter than a Honda.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
But it had all those Kawasaki stability traits, and the suspension the suspension wasn't too stiff like some of the other ones. And but it's interesting to like most of the works bikes I rode, in all honesty, were actually kind of horrible for me. They were just, too stiff, too much power, too hard hitting. A lot of times, way hard hitting power that was kind of it hit not where I wanted it to. Like it was either too early or too late, and that's the way that these guys would want these bikes set up.
God. So for me, I have sort of the opposite. So from Carmichael, McGrath, Lamson, I'm a brain fade right now on all the bikes that I've ridden. But what I noticed out of all those bikes that I rode, and I'm talking like Carmichael, like greatest of all time and everything, then McGrath, greatest supercross rider to ever ride, and then the other few go riders I mentioned. The main thing that I got from it, that they all had the bike set up similar, was the front forks were stiff.
Yep.
And the rear shock, I could ride their supercross stuff. I could ride it on an outdoor track. And I'm telling you, all those guys set it up similar. And the bikes that I had issues with, I rode Jimmy Button's bike one time, and I don't know how he rode it. Lawrence's bike I rode, the other Phil Lawrence, I think
Phil
was
Lawrence,
his,
yeah.
Yep, rode his bike one time. I don't know how. That would be half their problem was the rear end's too stiff, way too much on the front end. All the fast guys, and it was from 2-stroke to 4-stroke was the same thing. The front was stiff, the rear was supple enough to where it could accelerate through the bumps, and just do the stuff you needed to do. So as you watch those guys ride, it's wide open all the way to the last second, brake like a motherfucker.
Yeah.
And so all the weight's coming to the front, and then they're freaking back on the gas. I've rode Villapato's bike, same. I should probably write it down.
Yeah, high in the front, low in the rear.
Yes,
kind of feeling. And then they were in it. There was a whole area where they were like sweeping the bars back and cutting the subframes and making everything lower.
Yes, so that unicycling it through the turn, if that makes sense to you. So how I would say it is the faster these guys were, the fast guy. I rode Chad Reed's bike one time too, same way. The fast guys rode it on the rear wheel through the turn. So the slower guys are trying to ride it on the front wheel. So they're trying to get the weight onto the front. So they're putting stiffer springs on, more preload, coming in and trying to get the front end to do all this stuff. The fast guys, they understand that the front end ain't going to handle the speed. It's, dude, you got to, it's the rear wheel, getting the thing in there, then get back on the gas and then turning the bike through the turn on the rear wheel. So, whatever level you have, you're having fun. But like that level those guys are going at, to me, that's how they're making these things do what they're doing.
It's funny because I'm a front wheel turner, Willie. So thanks for describing my slow tendencies and stuff. But
and Jody would get along. It would be good.
No, his setup's not mine. I rode I rode some of his bikes. Like his bike, they would.
I couldn't.
So, no, because they were for me. To me, they felt high in the front too. Actually, believe it or not.
They were so stiff in the rear, but I don't know how. Yeah. But your weight, I don't know what your weight is. So
now it's plenty.
I was always like 155 pounds, so I'd get on their bikes. I didn't even move the rear end.
Yeah.
And most production bikes for me, the rear shock spring was always too stiff.
Right.
So I could go test, with whoever it was, the Japanese and KTM, and like, guys, if you have a next softer spring, put that in there, and then it changes the whole bike for me. So I was that guy, but I could communicate that to, the mechanic, whoever was representing the brand at that time, and get me sort of going in the right direction and feel happy.
So
otherwise, I'd have no preload on the spring. You know what I'm saying? I'd back it all the way off.
Yeah, and then it's not working right. Yeah.
Yeah. Not working right.
So worst factory bike. Let's say Chad Reed.
No, I liked his stuff, man. I could ride his stuff.
Stiff front ends. Yeah.
Oh, I liked that. I rode like that. So
yeah, I didn't
like even at pros.
Yeah, I was enduro guy, off road guy, so like.
Well, that's why. Yeah, that's
what wasn't too upsetting, but. So I'll tell you mine just to break the ice here. I can think about it. So my worst one ever was the bike McGrath loved, his 93 to 96 CR250.
I love that thing.
Was the worst motorcycle on the planet for me because the fork was stiff. The rear shock wasn't that bad, but it was awesome. Did that thing hit like a MF?
There's the best.
You could come out of a turn. Have 2 inches, and it would just shoot up into the air.
That thing was magic. Jody would get on me because I'd like the Honda. I'd like that whole era of Hondas.
Right.
I could get on that thing.
I like the stock ones.
I like them. I didn't like the stock. I liked them with a little bit of modification, and they would be just unbelievable.
Yeah. Yeah,
we're opposite, Jimmy.
I know. I'm feeling this right away. Actually, I knew this even when we were testing and stuff because I know what you like. I could see the bikes that you liked, and it's funny because if you were on the similar bike as me, and I knew you were still testing mostly stock. I'm like, okay, if I'm riding this because I like it, he's not gonna be happy. But
that is good.
But yeah, that power I couldn't like. Because we took it to a supercross track. We rode it on a supercross track, and I was I was just good enough if I was really comfortable to be able to jump the stuff.
Yeah.
And
Right.
I couldn't that bike because I never knew whether I was gonna underjump or overjump. I didn't know because I was scared to get it on the power. And that's just where that bike.
I loved it.
That bike works. So I went over and just found like tabletops that I could experiment with, just so I
safely
could,
do. Yeah.
so I could, because I wasn't going to jump anything with a gap, and it sure as hell wasn't going to do a rhythm, because if I lost any like wrist control, that thing would just shoot out from underneath you. And this is back in the two-stroke time, and that thing was jetted so crisp and so perfect and so gnarly.
Perfect.
I was like, okay, I'll do something else.
Well, now you heard McGrath had a great interview. I don't know who interviewed him, but he talked about that transition from that era that he dominated to the aluminum frame bike.
Right.
And, it was a last minute decision. He was going to die on the aluminum frame bike, switch to Suzuki. I mean, a great interview. So I don't know where it's at, but if people have a chance to see that explains it all. And I got to ride his Suzuki, and he set it up similar to the way the Honda was. Didn't have the power like the Honda did.
Yeah, it didn't have the power.
It didn't have the power, but still, to me, I enjoyed riding that bike, his Suzuki, and
I could. So that was a bad one. That was a bad one for me. And
so you're missing it. You're missing it. I'm just kidding.
This is like we kind of even rolling back to when we picked test riders and stuff like that. I used to like to work with test riders that didn't like what I liked, and it's funny that over the years, guys that have tested with me have sort of, they've evolved into like settings that are more normal, because they were a lot of them were racers. That's the only way you could get a guy that could show up at on a Tuesday or Wednesday to go ride their quote a racer, and they can come out and test bikes. But they all have these funky setups that's what they're comfortable in. A lot of that stuff that on these factory bikes, they're built for like safety. These guys, they're going to do stuff that you're never going to do. And you want it to not to crush or blow through the stroke or rebound in a funny way. It needs to be really, really predictable. So okay.
Now, was Tim Telford a test rider when you were at Dirt Rider?
Every once in a while.
Or did you miss him?
I missed him a little bit, but every once in a while he would show up. He was kind of one of more Carl's guys.
God, I had an unbelievable battle with him at Mammoth one year.
Yep.
I think we were both on 500s, and I think it was in the 30 Pro class, and he was on my ass I pulled the whole shot, and he was on my ass the whole time, and I beat him. And I think O'Mara or somebody, or Kehoe was in the, couldn't keep us in sight. We checked out. Then second moto, I ended up getting second. I think I went 1-2 for first overall, but I had an unbelievable race with that guy at Mammoth. I haven't seen him for years, but
I remember. I
had some good times.
Yeah, I remember he was I don't know if he got hurt or he just kind of got out of the moto stuff, but what a nice guy too.
Yeah. Very nice guy.
Okay,
Yeah.
Worst factory bike ever. Oh, you liked them all. Look at you.
I got to go back. I mean, I remember riding Button's bike, and I think he was Yamaha factory then. I don't know how he rode the thing. Honestly, I don't know how he got around the track.
Yeah. He was taller. He was taller. He was another one of those amateurs that just, like I was a 125 intermediate, and they came off of 80s. He got in the 125 class, and all of a sudden now there's a new guy that I can't beat.
Yeah. So really all, man, that the only thing that comes to in my mind right now, most of the factory bikes.
Did you ever ride one of Villeman's bikes? You had to have hated it if you rode it. Because he had kind of he was soft suspension guy and smooth power too. Lots of
I don't know if
lots of over rev. I like soft suspension and lots of over rev on the two strokes.
Yeah, no, I get that. I don't remember if I did or not. And I've ridden again, Jimmy. I mean, over the 25 years I've forgotten more stuff
more than you did.
Yeah. I wish, the pictures and stuff like that. Like back when we were riding and stuff, we didn't have the cameras and videos and stuff like that. So
all you have to do is go shoot, spend 20 minutes shooting photos, and then you could go ride, and you don't have to stop and do a video and do video clips around this section of the track and that section of the track. It's different. Talk to your Instagram followers live.
Exactly.
The intro. It's a
But like
different world.
like all the races I did, I used to race 50 times a year. And at those races, I'd usually race, usually 2 classes, sometimes 3.
Yep.
I did that for 25 years. And, from SRA Grand Prix, I remember going to those, and I'd ride the 125, 250, and 500 class on the same time, sometimes back to back.
Yep.
I did some of the works races when they were around. I wish I could have done more of those. I enjoyed those, but I didn't have the time to go do that stuff. But spent a lot of time at the track, racing, and then during the week testing motorcycles. And then my career has been, working with, Horst Leitners, Tom Whites, Mitch Paytons,
Yep.
Larry Pops, some really cool people that were, for us mainstay people in the industry during our heyday, if you want to call it that.
And now we're in the go-kart world.
It's crazy. So I'll take it from here. So I've always wanted to do. Oh, hey, what are you drinking there, man?
Oh yeah, well this is hold on.
You gotta pump that up. This
is a small section. If you're not familiar with the show,
I'm not.
So
sorry.
So this is Tech Talk Taco Tuesday. Sometimes there's an extra tea in there for tequila. And
I like that.
So tonight I have this Dos Artes Blanco, which is a gift from a friend. This is a very nice Blanco. So I just poured myself just a little teeny tiny whiskey in there. So yeah,
that is cool.
Okay,
so I'll tell you. I gotta tell you. I'm going to change it up for just a sec. Okay. So 1986, I win the Mexican Supercross Championship. I was 125 champion, and I missed the first round of the 250, so I ended up second at 250. They had a trophy presentation at this. I don't remember the name of the restaurant. It was in between Ensenada and wherever the Dune races, Canamar, whatever that place was. Yeah, so there's
I know which place it is. It's
the restaurant on the cliffs. So you're like in a restaurant that's just overlooking the ocean. And these, they do all the trophies and all that stuff. And they said, man, somehow I got in a tequila drinking contest with some 100-year-old Mexican. I don't think he was about 5 foot tall. I woke up the next day on the other side of the border. I was so whatever that stuff, message you have poison wise.
Yep.
I was in front of somebody's house. I tried to drive home. I literally couldn't drive. I drove on the freeway for about one exit, then pulled off on the exit, and I couldn't move. I literally was passed out in my trunk.
Yeah. Okay. So there's no such thing as a tequila drinking contest. That's just a.
I lost.
That's a bad. Yeah. I mean, for me, when I was younger, tequila meant like boxing gloves or naked, one of the two.
No.
And neither of those are good.
Yeah.
So no. I've learned through some friends, about some really good sipping tequila. So
you're on it. Very good. I've learned my lessons from my younger youth. But
right.
I'll
back to go-karting.
Go-karting. So I've always wanted to go-kart. Like I always wanted to try a shifter kart. And, from the 80s to the 90s, there's nowhere to buy a go-kart. There's no shops. There's none of this stuff. Internet sort of pops up, hard in the 2000s. I remember 2007 or 8. I think we went down to Adams go-kart track. There was 5 of us, my kid, a couple of my employees at MTA. And we go down there, we drive the beat up rental cars, and we have a blast. We all go, dude, let's go buy shifter carts. So we went back, we all Googled, go-kart shops. We pulled up the whatever go-kart places there were in Southern California. There was 4 of them that I found. First one I went to wouldn't sell me a shifter cart. They said, oh no, it's too hard. I didn't tell them who I was or nothing. I want a shifter cart. No, you got to start out like a KA 100, like Yamaha 100 from the 70s. Nah, I don't want to go there. Went to the next shop. Same story. They would sell me a shifter cart. Then I went to Nash Motorsports, whatever, is in Ontario, next to Pete Bartrano's shop back in Ontario. And same thing. He goes, no, you got to start out in a 100. I'm like, no. I had the last shop on my list, which out in Anaheim. I go, is it even worth it? Screw it. Drove out there, and it's Tom Kutcher, who runs SCUSA, which is Supercarts USA, and he's a shifter cart guy. So if I wouldn't have drove there, I would have never bought a shifter cart, and then I wouldn't be where I'm at right now. So in 2008, I say we all got shifter carts. We all showed up at Adams. All of us found them. You know, my 5 friends of us, we all sucked so bad. I mean, terrible, but we had so much fun, and it was like a new, you know, I was older. I was in my 40s, and just like, holy crap, this is the shit. So from that point on, we were hooked. You know, we practice, you know, on a Tuesday night and a Thursday night out at Apex or Adams. Troy would turn on the lights, and Dave DeMond at Apex would turn on the lights for us. We'd stay till 10, and we got pretty good pretty quick. And we'd go race REM on Saturday, come home, unload the motocross bikes, load the go-karts in, and drive out to those tracks and practice till late. So from 2008 till 2012, I was pretty fast. So won a lot of races, had a blast doing it. 2012, we decide, me and Billy, to go do the SCUSA Supernats, which is in Las Vegas, and it's the biggest go-kart race in the world. And we're literally pitting out of our pickup truck. We're, you know, parked about a mile away from everything. Everybody's in all their semi trucks and, you know, pony carts, CRG, Burrell, and Billy wins the race. Fastest, I mean, puts it on pole, smokes everybody. So that was November 2012. So,
And
you know,
is this age group? Is it age group or is
no,
it,
hell no. No,
oh,
there
it's just
is
everybody.
Dude, there is no beginner, novice, intermediate, pro. It's like pro. You go in there, and Billy no one knew who the hell we were, had no freaking clue. Billy wins his first Supernats at, I can't remember how old he was at that time, 19 or something like that, 20 or whatever. And on the drive home, so we're driving home Monday morning, and our phone just is exploding. And I had been selling go-kart parts through MTA. So I had radiator kits and Honda engine kits. You know, I built up the Honda engine kits that they sold from HPD. And literally by the time we got back home, you know, the 4-hour drive, I look at him, I go, he wanted to go to college. I'm like, you can go to college or, you know, and work for somebody, or I'll help you start a company. So we created MRC, and we opened that up in January of 2013. So now we're a go-kart company, and we're importing chassis and all that stuff. And out of nowhere,
the progression from like, okay, we're just out riding around having fun, to buying a go-kart to national champion is how long?
4 years.
4 years.
And Billy sort of was not very good at it in the beginning. I would smoke his ass. Billy, if you're listening. But all of a sudden he just figured it out. I mean, like a second a lap faster than my whole group and everybody else.
This is
motocross.
Really?
That's moto.
You're claiming
motocross. Claiming motocross. Again, the amount of times we raced. So your thinking pattern. So I'll put it. Let me do this little segment here. So, like in moto, we can go and race, you know, every weekend or twice a weekend, and you know, over a 2-year time span, we can put in hundreds and hundreds of races, and that's teaching you how and what to think about the week before, the night before the race, when you're on this racecraft, when you're on the starting line, how and when to pass, you know, risk to reward, all that stuff. So Billy started racing when he was 4 years old, and he raced with me every weekend from 4 years old all the way till he's 20 years old. So we get into karting, and his skill set compared to the normal karter who races 8 times a year, and he practices the day before that, you know, they're calling themselves racers. And there's the guys that, you know, do it like we do at moto, but very far and few between. So you don't hook up with those guys until you go to like the Supernats. So all of that experience that Billy has from moto helped him accelerate his career in karting like you can't even believe. His starting techniques, and the karting industry is now sort of caught up to what, you know, he created in the karting world as far as starts. But he could come from 7th place on the grid. We start F1 style. So shifter kart style starts just like an F1 car, standing start. He could come from 7th place and pass everybody before you're coming out of turn 1. And people would just be like, freaked the fuck out. Like, how in the hell? So that skill set from Moto into karting helped him excel into karting. So again, we go from 2013. By 2016, we're the most powerful, the biggest shifter kart team probably in the United States. We're selling more chassis than probably just about any dealer in the United States. We're pushing about 200 chassis a year. And then that chassis brand imploded. They had a fight with their warehouse in Wisconsin. They're manufactured in Italy. They get in a big fight. Boom, gone. So we're like, oh, wow, that's interesting. So we pick up another brand for 2017. Great guys. Rob Soros out of Sonoma, California, Luminos. But we couldn't get chassis. We go from 150 plus chassis a year to 25 chassis. And our company, went from a couple $100,000 a year up to, millions of dollars of business in a year to now we can't get chassis and we're flatlining. So we go, guys, you got to give us chassis because our program is, based off the chassis sales.
Hey, well, you did something like this at ATK, no?
I'm going to tell you, gets right to the same point.
Okay.
So we go from 2017 to 2019 not being able to get chassis. So I sit down with my kid. And it's like, the Italians are, I'm sorry, they're messed up. Their whole program is messed up. That's why
they can make 5, right?
5 for their drivers, 5 perfect, but the rest of us get junk, and it's clapped out. So in 2019, we come up with a plan to manufacture our own chassis out of our facility in Riverside, California. So bender I got from Doug Dubach, which is the bender I used, or I actually got for him when I set up his company in the back of MTA back in the early 2000s. So I helped
Dubach
Doug
racing the pipes.
Yeah. So I'm the one who designed his extrusions, his caps, and, did all the prototyping and stuff. I'd show up at 3 a.m. at MTA, do all his prototyping. He'd come in, take it out the track, come back and go, need more bottom or mid. We do the modifications. And then MTA would give him purchase orders for all the pipes. So he had a pretty easy way to get into business. And our relation is sort of based off of that. But anyway, we come up with this plan to build go-karts, and we started and built our first chassis in January 2020, and then COVID hits. And I had a program set up with KTM to buy engines from, and COVID, because of this, the supply chain couldn't produce for 2020, couldn't supply for 2021, couldn't supply for 2022. They wouldn't commit to 2023, so I called Yamaha and worked out a program with them. And that's what we're currently using right now. So our plan that
Yamaha Blue Crew, sponsor of Tech Talk Taco Tuesday. See, when you want the fastest kart motors, you want the same motors that are in your bike. So you're using YZ65, YZ85, YZ125, my favorite motocross bike. That's the only Willie, the only motocross bike I own right now is a YZ125. Yeah. And you have a YZ250 shifter cart?
Yep. So we do those 4 engine brands sizes right now. It's the first, like I say, we're 3 years behind on our business plan, but at least I have all the stuff there. We're working really hard to get caught up on all the pipes because all the pipes are different than the motocross pipes, just so the fitment and the power band. We run from 8,000 RPM up to about 13,000 RPM, and Moto's like from 2,000 RPM to 8,000 RPM. So our, you got to adjust.
Way different.
So we're working with Mitch at Pro Circuit and Art at RLV up in Santa Maria right now, real hard to try to get this stuff done so we can sell go-karts. But that's sort of what, and we did moto and karting probably till about 2015. And then the karting thing just went 24/7. It just, the customers and the direction that we were headed consumed all of our time. And, I did this for my son because I looked at like motocross guys. I looked at, of course the superstars are making millions, but then there's that group of guys that, make a couple $100,000 a year for a few years and then, it ends. And I didn't want my kid to be like that. And then
they become riding school coaches.
That you got it.
By the way, www.jimmylewisoffroad.com. Hey, if you want to do a extreme enduro class this weekend at King of the Motos, they have Moto Madness Weekend. So check out any social media with King of the Motos or Jimmy Lewis Off-Road in it. Sorry to interrupt, Willie. I just have to throw a plug for myself in there so I can afford to continue living after having that mediocre career. We'll call it. Okay.
Well,
so keep
you
going.
know what I'm talking about.
Oh, I know
So,
exactly what you're talking about. But that was good.
So I see that like in my kid, like, yeah, he's fast. He's a 4-time Supernats champion right now. There's only a couple of guys that have achieved that in Supernats history. I think they're on Supernats 26 right now. Very difficult to win a go-kart race at that level. We come in as, like out of our pickup truck racing against these teams that are like factory Honda, Kawasaki, Suzuki, Yamaha, KTM. We're not there yet, and we're competing and building chassis that compete and outperform a lot of the Italian stuff. And then with the Yamaha program, we're hoping to rejuvenate the shifter kart class, because when Honda tooling basically wore out in 2018, they couldn't produce a Honda 125 engine kit that they were selling to the karting community.
Was the Honda engine the go-to? If you liked what you saw in this video, come check us out over at dirtbiketest.com on the webs. We have bike tests, product tests, a lot of fresh dirt, and you can even support us by clicking through our links. Hopefully, we'll see you out in the trail.
The defending champion, the all-new Yamaha YZ450F.